I have this opportunity to share this with you tonight. A lot of the content that I'm going to be sharing is new content. Before I get into everything, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Mike Rosenfeld, and gosh, what I do is I light myself up every day. And the way I light myself up every day is by challenging myself, by learning and growing, and being a part of other people's learning and growth process. So tonight, what we're going to be going over are the key tools to showing up strong. What I mean by showing up strong is the following. We've all seen somebody like walk into a room, and as they walk into the room, it's as if the ocean parts for them. They have this aura, they have this confidence, they have this joy, they're magnetic, they radiate positivity. They're not stuffy at all. And when they talk, they're extremely likable. They sound clear and knowledgeable, and they're really open to consistent growth. That's what I mean by showing up strong. There are 4 basic blocks in order to show up strong that I'm going to go over tonight. The first one simply is to command your strength. We'll talk about that in detail. The second one is to construct a very clear vision and a clear strategy. The third one is to develop a very strong mindset. And the last one is to create habits that stick. And I'm going to get into all the specifics around all of these. What I'd like to ask is if anybody has a question, put it in the chat. If you don't see that I get to it, just take yourself off mute and say, hey, Mike, I'll know that you're there and I'll come back in a few moments to answer your question as soon as I finish the thought. So without further ado, let's boogie. Let's get into this. So this is me. I'm Mike Rosenfeld. I work with professional athletes. In this picture's up here, we have the heavyweight champion of the world. We have a middleweight champion. We have the welterweight champion of the world. We have Jamie Foxx. We have a group of Charles Schwab. And we also have a nonprofit, the Diabetes Association. Everything I do is to help people get to that place of strength, that place of confidence, that place of power. Why? Whoever's thing is not on mute, please mute it. I'm having a tough time muting everybody from my end, so if you can please mute yours, that would be amazing. Awesome. Because my belief is not only will these people perform better when they're in their power, when they're in their strength. That's important. I love being a part of people's success. But more important than that is when people really find their authentic voice, when they find their strength, their passion, their purpose, their power. Not only is their performance better, but what I've learned, their contribution to the world is much greater. So each person I work with, each celebrity I work with, pro athlete I work with, each corporation I work with now, I have them sign a contract that everything that they gain while working with me as a coach, they have to go out into the world and pay it forward. I don't care what that looks like. Because for some, it might be around the environment. For some, it may be around geriatrics. For others, it may be around kids. Each and every one of us is called to different things. That's what makes us so powerful. We're not all the same. So being a part of their lives, sure, it helps them win championships or take their business to another level. But more importantly, it gives them a sense of purpose and the ability to pay it forward and contribute to the world in a really powerful way. Before we begin, I just want to know, does anybody have any questions? No. Okay. So my response to this is I need everyone to please, please, please mute your computer. Mute your computer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to mute as many as I can, but it's very difficult with everybody who signed up. But I think for the most part, well, I'm seeing some names in here that I have not seen in a long time. I'm really excited to have you guys here. All right. So what is this all about? You're gonna have to excuse me. I'm gonna be getting up, I'm gonna be moving around because that's just how I like to be. I don't wanna just sit still, I like to be dancing. The first picture you see is of a place in Louisiana called Hemingway. Now, I was brought to this place because it was an investment opportunity. I was asked to actually take over the property. It's this huge property, and they wanted to do all of these programs and retreats. So when I was there, I was talking to the owner, and he had me stand at the center stage of this cathedral. And here's what it was like. I'm standing there. Can you guys still hear me? Thumbs up if you can. Okay, so I'm standing in the center of this huge property, this huge cathedral, and the owner of the cathedral says, "Hey, Mike, say your name just in a basic level." So I say, "Mike," and my name fills up this entire space and then bounces back and hits me. It's like my voice carried so far and came back. It was full. My voice was full. And then when he asked me to do, he said, "Now move over just an inch." So I move over an inch, and he says, "Okay, say your name, but say it really, really loud." So I say, "Mike!" And what happened at that point was my voice went about 3 feet, and then it died right in the air. I didn't even hear it after that. It was just like, "Mike," boom, gone. So the first building block is to command your strength.
For the next 24 hours, including recognizing all
Everybody, please put this on. Please
using
put
tools
this
for the program
on
today.
mute. Please put it on mute. Please put it on mute. Please put it on mute. Okay. You guys can still hear me? Okay. So as that happened, I realized that this is a massive synonym for life. Like, this is the way life is. We all are born with a very powerful voice. We're all born with a truth, with something very strong. And somewhere throughout our lives, we've forgotten how powerful we are. And it's as if we moved over an inch and our voice just isn't carrying. Our strength just isn't there. We're not in our power. And so what I know to be so important is that if we are not in our power, we're not showing up strong. And our body, our spirit, our soul has a way of telling us that we're not in our strength, we're not in our power. And here's how you know. You feel a level of anxiety, you feel a level of depression, you feel a level of insecurity, you don't feel alive, you feel tired. Basically, what it's saying is you're slightly off center. And most of us think like, "Oh my God, I have to change everything in my life. I have to change my whole world." And the truth is, that's not the truth. What we need to do is just return back to our voice. One of the things that I was lucky enough to experience was I had an opportunity to work with Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic is one of the best tennis players, if not the best tennis player in the entire world. And I remember talking with him the day before he played Rafael Nadal. I knew nothing about tennis, but I know the mind and I know human performance. So what I said to him was, "Hey, listen, Rafael Nadal I know is great. And the one thing I know is you will never be as good as him." And he looks at me like, "Huh?" "At being him. You will never be as good as him at being him. We will never be as good as anyone else at being that person. The key is to be the best of ourselves. But throughout our lives, we begin thinking about ourselves in relationship to others." I remember being a kid. I have an older brother, and he excelled in all of his classes. He did great in all of his classes, but I would have the same teachers as him. And they would say to me, "Mike, why aren't you as smart as your brother? Why can't you focus like your brother? Why can't you sit still in class like your brother?" And what that did to me was it killed my self-esteem. I actually thought throughout my life that something was wrong, majorly wrong with me, because I could not succeed in the classes that the people in my family succeeded in, my friends succeeded in. And it really wasn't until I was with my mentor at the age of like 26 when he looked at me. And this guy was the vice president of $1 billion corporation, Seagram's. He looks at me and he goes, "You really don't even know who you are, do you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know who I am. What are you talking about, man?" He's like, "No, you really don't even know who you are. Because if you knew how powerful you were, watch out." And I looked at him and there was no hesitation in his voice. Now, throughout my life, I received compliments, but I received them from people who I know love me. So they were invested in me. It's a little bit different when you receive a compliment from a mentor who has no stake in your game, who actually just like believes in you without being attached to you. And I actually listened to him and I was like, "Well, first of all, what makes you think that?" He goes, "Well, first of all, you have this like optimism about you." And he was like, "You were a gang member as a kid. You're now working with $1 billion corporation. I've seen you working with kids in halfway houses, kids who are incarcerated. I've seen you in boardrooms. I've seen you in all of these different things. You have an ability to communicate with people no matter who they are or where they come from." And I'm like, "Yeah, and so?" He was like, "And you don't get that that's a strength of yours?" And I'm like, "I never really thought about it." And so at that point, I wanted to know more about myself. And I wanted to know more about that strength and I wanted to build off of it. You know, I don't remember the exact quote by Albert Einstein. It was along the lines of, "If you judge a fish by the way he climbs a tree, you'll think the fish is stupid. Fish don't climb trees." I don't do math. Like, it's not my game. Like, I don't give a shit about the stock market. Like, it's not that I don't care now. I do care now about these things. But growing up, I thought that's who I needed to be. No, I was being slightly off center and I was screaming, but my voice was only carrying a few feet. And so I thought poorly about myself. And when I would walk in the room, I had anxiety. And I lived in my head. And that led to addiction, it led to incarceration, it led to a lot of different things. Until I learned how to come back to my center, find my voice. Now, how it works is throughout our lives, we develop these belief systems, which have nothing to do with truth. They're simply beliefs. And the way it works is similar to this. If you could imagine, we're walking down a street and there's a building that we pass. And I look at you and I say, "Be careful when you pass this building because tons of people have gone by that building, have gotten mugged." Now imagine for 6 months you keep walking by that building. How would you feel? You feel nervous, you feel anxious, right? And then I look at you and I'm like, after 6 months, I'm like, "Why do you always feel nervous and anxious when you walk by this building?" And you're like, "Because it's dangerous. People have gotten mugged." And I look at you and I'm like, "Yo, I was just kidding. It's completely safe." You believed it was unsafe because you learned it and you trusted that. And so for 6 months, it affected everything. Same thing. I was a kid. I thought that I was stupid. And then what happens is whatever your subconscious is, your conscious is going to tell that narrative. So we're not even going to be able to see beyond that. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a little while. But the first building block to owning your power is to command your strength. So what I ask for everybody to do just for a moment is to close your eyes. And obviously only do this if you're sitting in a safe place. So we're going to close our eyes. And we're going to slowly inhale to the count of 5. We're going to hold to the count of 3 and exhale to the count of 6. And do it on your own. It doesn't matter if it's a fast or slow count. Do it in a way that's comfortable for you. Just going to do this for a moment. And notice if you feel a little lightheaded, or if you're feeling a little tension, or whatever's showing up for you, then just let go of that. Don't judge it. Just let it be. And simply focus on your breath. And to the best of your ability, I'd like for you to imagine walking into a room, hundreds of people there. And as you walk in, you feel free, you feel confident, you feel powerful, you feel strong. And then all of a sudden, the person in the front of the room calls your name. And they ask you to come to the front of the entire room, center stage. You're excited to be there. And as you're standing there, they're saying 3 things about you that you have achieved and that you have contributed to the world. What 3 things about you would make you feel strong in terms of your achievements or contribution? Beautiful. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath. And just for a moment, shake your arms out. Just let that go for a moment, okay? All we're doing right now is really calling upon the center. We're calling upon your power. And by the time we hang up tonight, you will have connected to something within you that will allow you to build the life that you've always dreamed of, because that's what you're here for. We're not here to play small, none of us. And none of us are equal. We're all unique. We're all unique. We all have special gifts, special talents, but throughout our lives, we've compared ourselves to some standard that has nothing to do with ourselves. Beliefs about ourselves that have nothing to do with reality. And so, once we begin to find our voice and really hone in on it, this is where the magic happens. This is where you begin to achieve more. Achieve more in terms of your relationships with yourself, with others. Achieve more in terms of your finance or your career. Achieve more in terms of your health and well-being. Achieve more in all areas of your life. And you begin to impact the world in a greater place, in a greater way. Okay, so I'm going to pause for just a moment. And if anyone has a question on that in that area, just go ahead and take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask away. So what I just shared was some theory, but I'm going to go into some exercises now that help you take this theory and really own it powerfully. So if anybody has any questions, just take yourself off mute. Okay, so no questions right now. So the real question I believe that everyone should ask is, how do I do this? How do I find my strength? How do I command that? Boom, I found the mute all, and I think I got it. Beautiful. Okay, and here's the answer. It's part of the second building block, which is very simple. Construct a crystal clear vision. Now, how do you do that? Well, just know one thing. When you are off center, what it does is it puts you in your head. Why? Because when you're in center, you're in the now. You're in the moment. And how are you in the moment when you're in center? Well, it's very simple. The reason we're not in there in the moment is because we're in the past or we're in the future. And the reason we're in the past or the future is because we're not trusting ourselves in the moment. And what happens is, if your space is not defined, you will be all over the place. And what I mean by that is when an athlete is in the zone, they're not in the past, they're not in the future, because you can't control either of those. They're completely present in the moment. And in the moment is where all of that creative power comes from, right? So, how do you construct a crystal clear vision? Well, imagine trying to look at a movie screen, right? And the projector is blurry. Well, if the projector is blurry, the picture is going to be blurry. And when you're watching it, you're not going to really be able to get a clear understanding as to what's happening, which is going to put you in your head. So, like, if I'm not in my strength, if I'm not trusting who I am, whenever I show up somewhere, I'm going to be in my head. And this is what's going to create so much anxiety. It's wrong perception. It's just a matter of wrong perception. Now, I run a lot of programs to help people alleviate anxiety, and they hate to hear this. They hate to hear that the reason they're having anxiety is because they're focusing on something from a very weak perspective, a less than powerful perspective. They want to hear that something's wrong with them. They want to hear that there's a massive problem, and that's the excuse as to why they're feeling this way. But the truth of the matter is, it's not a massive problem. It really doesn't have to be. It's as simple as you make it. And the truth is, when you're seeing things through cloudy lenses, you're not going to feel stable. You're not going to feel strong when you show up. So how do you make sure that the lenses you're seeing through are powerful? Well, the mind lives in duality. Should I this? Should I that? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? And when we're living in our head, we're not in the moment. And also when we're living in our head, what happens is we begin to breathe short and shallow. Think about it. Just do this for a moment. Focus on a challenge or a problem that you're going through and just think about it and notice the way you're breathing. You're likely breathing in your upper chest, which is emotional breathing. And remember, 70% of our metabolic waste is released through our breathing. So when we're living in our head, essentially what that does is it sends emotion throughout our body that's contracting, right? So our breath becomes short and shallow. So rather than living in our head, what we want to do is we want to go to that place of truth. Our head can be convinced, you should this, you should not. The heart cannot be convinced. It's either real for you or it's not. I can't say, hey, Steve, see that person over there? Go fall in love with them. They're amazing. And all of a sudden, because like somebody tells you they're amazing or even creates a case that you're going to fall in love. We can try to convince the heart. And that's why so many of us are in careers that are unfulfilling or in relationships that are unfulfilling, because we're trying to convince ourselves, our truth, that this is enough. But it's not. Or unless it is. If it is, it's amazing. But if it's not, it's not. And the only way to feel powerful is to recognize that we're slightly off center and we're trying to convince ourselves that this is our center. Maybe because our parents taught us that this is what we should be doing, or maybe because society said this is the type of person that we should love, or maybe because when we were younger, we fell in love with someone and we believed that this was the only person for me, and we limited ourselves to that. None of these things have anything to do with reality. They're all beliefs. And so what we want to do is we want to come to our center. And here's what I would like us to do. Here's our first exercise for tonight. Please take an area of your life that you want to focus on tonight. Finances, relationships, health, your contribution to the world, anything. Take an area of life that you really want to focus on. Beautiful. And now, on a scale of 1 through 10, rate yourself on how you're doing in that area. 10, you are in your strength, you are in your power, you are there. 1, we don't want to talk about that. Like, that's a tough case, right? So where are you? Let's GPS where you are. And the reason we want to do that is because we have to be honest with where we are in order to get to where we want to go. We can't tell a GPS that we're, trying to get to New York and we're pretending we're in Miami, but we're really in Philadelphia. Like, it's going to give us the wrong directions. We really have to be honest with where we are and compassionate with where we are, not judge where we are. In fact, love where we are, because it's going to help us get to where we want to go. So on a scale of 1 through 10, where are you? If you have a pen and paper, write down the top 2 or 3 reasons why you are where you are. In other words, what's making you give yourself that score? Oh, I'm seeing so many old faces. Hey, Lisette. Hey, Gina. Hi, Sarah. So cool. Hey, Ben, what's up? Allison, awesome to see you. Mad Dog's in the house. Dave DeMarco, how you doing, my brother? It's good to see all of you guys out there. Great. Now, imagine for a moment you were at a 10. Can you see what that would be like? Who are you at a 10? And when you see yourself at a 10, what are 2 adjectives that you would use to describe yourself at a 10? Are you free? Are you exuberant? Are you powerful? Are you compassionate? Are you successful? Whatever they are for you, let it come from your heart, not from your head. And be careful, because it's very simple to go into old programming. Okay, me at a 10, I am financially, I'm a multi-millionaire. But the truth is, like, you only think you should be a millionaire. Like, it's not even like important to you. Like, other things are more important to you. Or you might say anything for that matter. Like, just be careful that you're not using social conditioning and you're going within in this moment to find out what is real for you. And now take the 2 things that you wrote down and add them up. So let's say out of 10, you're compassionate and you are hardworking, right? In one word, I'm a badass. Or in one word, I'm a superwoman or superman. Whatever it is for you, add that up. Now go back to the number where you are currently. And what are 2 words to describe your current reality? 2 adjectives to describe where you are now. And do the same thing. Add it up. Here's how it works. Whatever the 2 words that you use to describe where you are now has a lot to do with your beliefs about yourself. I'm going to go into that in a moment. But it's very hard to break this cycle to get from where you are to where you want to be. If it were easy, everyone would stick to their New Year's resolutions. If it were easy, everyone would be at a 10 all the time. The beautiful thing about this is the mind is a muscle. And tonight we're going to go over how to train that muscle using top tools of neuroscience and flow state psychology. But right now we want to just assess where we are We're going into the gym and like, when you first join a gym and they check your fat, they put you on a scale, they do all of that. They want to measure where you are before they create the goals of how you get to where you want to go. So that's what we're doing up until now. Now, construct a clear vision. When you look at the top 2 words of you out of 10, please close your eyes for a moment. Take 5 slow, deep breaths. And on the last breath, hold it for a moment and imagine what would be different in your life, what you would be doing, where you would be, who you would be surrounded by, if you really exemplified those 2 characteristics that led to the 3rd of you out of 10. Really be patient and calm in this moment. Shake out your shoulders if you need to, like really settle into your space right now. Beautiful. And now ask yourself, what are the top 3 things for you to work on to get yourself from where you are to a 10? So in your heart, say, okay, so if I was able to do these 3 things, it would get me from where I am to being at a 10. Write those 3 things down. And now we're going to do a process called chunking. So my mentor taught me this process. It's really simple. I don't know if you guys have heard of the World's Strongest Man competition, but basically there was a competition that took place thousands of years ago, stories told. And basically in this competition, they had men from all over the world come to compete to see who can break this barrel of sticks, right? So they would break these sticks and then they would add more sticks to see who can break the most. And finally, it got to the point where nobody can break this barrel of sticks. And finally, after that point, this little old woman walks up and she laughs at all the men. And she goes, you guys have no brains. She goes, I am the world's strongest man. And they looked at her and they laughed. And she took the barrel of sticks and she went to break it over her shoulder. And she pulled one out at a time and broke all of them. She was not only the strongest man or man, she was the wisest. And this is how it is with our goals. Why? Because there's something called destination disease. Destination disease is when we look at where we are and where we want to go, and we're like, oh my God, how am I going to get all the way up this mountain? And we become so overwhelmed by the mountain, and it paralyzes us. We can only take a few steps before we look at it and like, we'll never get there. I just joined the gym. I wanted to lose 15 pounds. I've been there for a week. I've only lost a half a pound. Forget it. This is never going to happen. And we give up, or like the story that I love to tell. Allison, you may remember this one. It's the story of starting a fire. It takes, I guess, 401 degrees in order to start a fire, right? And the story is these people are sitting outside in the freezing cold, and the only way for them to survive is to light a fire. So one of them takes the sticks, starts rubbing it together, rub it. It's getting hotter, so they're all getting excited. Pretty soon it's going to into a fire, right? And then before you know it, doubt creeps in. And as soon as that doubt creeps in, the person begins going slower and slower and slower, and they're wondering why the fire never started. They were up to 400 degrees. All they needed to go was a little bit further, and it would have kicked in. It's no different. When we go to lose weight, or we start a new career, or we begin doing new things in our lives, we begin, and then all of a sudden, like we become nervous, but there's a turning point. There's always a turning point when we're making progress where we just enter into a rhythm. Anybody who's ever watched a Rocky movie will remember that when Rocky starts training, he always starts off slow until something happens and it just kicks in. Maybe Adrian shows up on the beach or something happens, right? It's the same thing. And that's why destination disease is real. So with the World's Strongest Man competition, what we learn to do is we take out one stick at a time. We don't keep counting. We don't look at the score, but we make our next step the best step. So here's how it works. When I asked you to write down 3 things that you can do, under those 3 things, write down for each of them the top 2 things you need to do in order to accomplish them. So if you wrote 3 things, what's the top 2 things you need to do for the first thing? What's the top 2 things you need to do for the second? What's the top 2 things you need to do for the third, right? We're chunking, we're breaking it down. And as you're doing this, at the same time, in your mind, begin to prioritize those 3 things. Which needs to come first, which comes second, which comes third. And when you do that, think of which one is going to develop, which one are you going to be able to develop momentum with. Okay, guys, at this point, we're talking about how to find our sweet spot, how to claim our strength, how to make it happen, how to bring it out. And one of the exercises we're doing now is by tuning into who we are at our best, getting clear of a few qualities that we embody at our best. Now I ask you, as you're doing this, what if you can rewire your mind and fully not just write these things down, but just as you are at whatever number you called yourself at now, what if you actually embodied those characteristics? What if you can rewire your subconscious? What if you could rewire your nervous system so that it wasn't like, I wish I was that, or I hope to be that. You can actually feel that way now. Has anybody in this group done Be to Become with me or any Be to Become exercise with me? If you are in this group on this call and if you're even familiar with what Be to Become is, just take yourself off mute or raise your hand for a sec. Who do I see? Okay, Steve, you're the first. You have to unmute yourself though. Okay.
Unmute.
Yeah, there you are. So can you just share a little bit with us about what that was like for you and the changes that you went through?
Well, I was dissatisfied with the engineering position I was in. I really wanted this, leadership position. But I was part of a cadre of, I don't know, a dozen engineers. We all worked in the same, we called it the fishbowl, this kind of thing. Well, what I did was I started dressing like the boss. That's really all I did. But before long, I noticed that I was kind of the unofficial leader of the fishbowl, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, after about a year or so, the boss decided he's going to retire to the mountains of Tennessee. Guess who got the job?
I know the story. I remember clearly.
Yep.
And how about with relationships? Like, does it apply to a relationship too?
Yep, absolutely it does.
If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. Along that same time, this was a few years ago, I had a pretty nasty divorce, with someone that I'd committed to spend the rest of my life with, spent 20 years with. But again, after a period of being on the canvas, getting, kind of dust myself off, getting back up, I said, okay, would I want to date me? Well, the answer was no. So, I said, okay, how do I add value to anyone who would want to go out with me, kind of thing. And again, I'll spare some of the details, but I started, kind of, living that behavior. And I just got married last month to someone that I wouldn't have even thought would give me the time of day 5 years ago.
I remember, my brother. I remember the conversations, and I remember. Now, it just didn't happen, though. You put in work, right? Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And there were some setbacks, and there were some days when I thought this is not worth it. This, just it's not going to happen. It's too far, out in the future. I'm not that guy. Well, guess maybe I am.
yes, maybe, all right, you're jumping out of planes now, you're surfing, like I'm watching you on social media,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, holy cow, right? So it is possible, right? And even more is possible. More is always possible because we are here to consistently expand. And the more expansive we become, the more we get to realize that we're not who we thought we were, and we're so much, much, much more.
That's for sure. I would have never thought you would ever see me skydive. But my wife and I are very avid skydivers now, very much so.
It's safe for me to say that you will never see me skydive. I think my mom is actually on this call too, and I'm sure she's saying, "Thank God." So here's the deal, guys. When we can create from this place of truth, of who we are. And this is just one exercise. And at the end of this tonight, I'm going to share something that hopefully you guys all participate in. It'd be absolutely amazing where we go even deeper, more exercises and so forth and so on, but I'll share that later. What we want to do is, we want to know that you, me, all of us are here on purpose, with a purpose, and we're powerful. Now, if you think of the ocean, if you think of the mountains, if you think of the sky, the same God that created all of those things said to himself, you belong on earth too. All of us. So the same person, the same God that created all these miracles actually created each and every one of us. And it's not by chance. It's because each and every one of us has a really powerful purpose. But part of this is to be able to let go of who we think we are and discover who we truly are. I was working out with someone 2 days ago, and I had him do this exercise that painful as heck. Well, this guy is like the epitome of high performer, right? And he looks at me and he was like, Mike, why are you making me burn the heck out of my shoulders, right? And I said, because all of us go through pain. All of us go through pain in our lives. But the way we associate to the pain is based on our identity. What I mean by identity is how we view ourselves, how we view the world, and how we think people view us. So when you walk in the room, like, what's the story you're telling yourself on how people perceive you, right? That's your identity. And I have never met someone, even the most successful people in the world, that when we're really sitting there talking, that they don't at least have some negative thoughts about how they think people perceive them. I think all of us do, at least in my experience, and I've coached well over 1,000 people in my life and spoken to well over 1 million people in different platforms and auditoriums and centers, so forth and so on. I have never met someone that says, everyone thinks I'm amazing. No, and then when I say, okay, so what do they not think is amazing? They have that story. So those 3 things, how you view yourself, how you view the world, how you think the world views you, is your identity. So when I was having him do this exercise, he was relating to that exercise, that pain, based on his identity. What that means is when we go through challenges in this world, what we're doing is we're comparing ourselves to the challenge and whether or not we think we're going to be able to overcome it, right? And that's why so many of us fall short of overcoming challenges, because we don't really believe that we're capable of it. Now, some challenges are down here, we can do this. But what about that challenge about being in the most amazing relationship, or that challenge of making your current relationship 10,000 times more fulfilling, or that challenge of taking your career to a whole new level, or earning 5 times the amount that you're currently earning, or being way healthier than you currently are, or losing those pounds or gaining those pounds. Those are the challenges I'm talking about, not the ones that we're just kind of I can overcome the challenge. If I have a bad hair day, I'll be fine. Well, not me. Anyway, so how we see ourselves in relationship to the challenge is what determines how we're going to get through the challenge. So what I'm having these people do when we're doing this exercise is it gets to a point when we create a certain type of rhythm, I get them into flow state. So flow state, and here's a little of the flow state psychology. Flow state is when your brain waves begin to slow. They go from beta to alpha to gamma to delta, and then ultimately they slow down, sometimes even into theta, depending on how much we get into it. Our body begins to produce certain chemicals, more adrenaline, a little norepinephrine, some dopamine. Ultimately, as we go through the flow state stages, we begin to produce more serotonin and dopamine and ultimately oxytocin. So physiologically, we know that the body is going through a transformation when we're in flow state. What's happening in our minds in flow state is we're feeling powerful. We're feeling connected. We're in the moment. We feel a sense of joy and of ease. Like when you see a basketball player nailing down those threes, or you see a woman in that board meeting and she's just freaking killing it and everything is just flowing and she's winning and she's fast and she's strong and everybody's like, what? That's flow state. Or when you're on that dance floor and you're just vibing and you're one with the music, right? You're not in your head, you're in flow state. So we know flow state exists. We know what's going on in our body scientifically when we're in flow state. And we now know that there are 4 channels, in other words, 4 avenues to get into flow state. And when I'm taking my clients or whomever I'm working with through a process of this, what I'm doing is I'm putting them in a pain situation that really simulates real life, the challenge of real life. And ultimately what they have to do and they end up doing is they lose their current identity and they step into who they truly are. What I mean by that, and I have a poem, and part of the poem says, it's not who you are that holds you back. You just forgot. What holds you back is who you think you are not. So let go of who you think you are, connect to who you really are and were always meant to be. Stop judging yourself. Stop worrying. Stand up tall, smile, and breathe. When we're able to eradicate who we think we are, we begin to experience who we truly are. This is mental strength. This is mental strength. And here's the beauty behind it. All of us have a muscle. The brain, it's a muscle. And you can imagine if I go like this over and over again, my biceps are going to form a certain way. Did you know that on average, we all think roughly 77,000 thoughts each day? And did you know that over 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts from the day before? Maybe in a different context, maybe different characters. So what are we doing? We're working our brain a certain way. And what happens is when our brain is working in a certain way, we get the same results over and over again. That's why we stay stuck in cycles. I just want you to imagine for a second. Well, actually, for one moment, let me take everybody off of mute. Not working. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so everyone say hello.
Hello.
What's up, Mike?
Okay. Anyway,
Hello.
everyone at the same time. Mamma mia, mama.
Mia.
Mamma mia, mama.
Mamma mia.
Oh, say, can you?
See.
God, you guys can't sing. We're the perfect crew. All of
Yeah.
us. I sure as hell can't either. What I did was I triggered every one of you to say Mia, and then I triggered every one of you to say C. Throughout our lives, challenges occur and they trigger us to go back to that identity. Does that make sense? We want to move forward, but then Mamma Mia, before you know it, boom, we lose it and we go back to that identity. So what we want to learn to do is rewire ourselves so when we get triggered, we're absolutely able to change that identity and step into our power. This is cultivating mental strength. Now, in this picture, you see a woman and you see a storm coming. Anyone who knows me, when they say, hey, Mike, let's do something, or Mike, can we do this? My response 99% of the time is, let's dance. All right, let's dance. Why? Because there are 4 channels to getting into flow state. The first channel is through the 5 senses. The second channel to get into flow state are our thoughts and cognitive processes. Okay, I'm not going to go, the third one is breathing, the fourth is environment. Okay, we can talk more about that. But I want to talk about our cognitive processes, right? And I want to share just one thing tonight on this call that will really, really be a game changer once you work this muscle. When I say let's dance, it's because life is rhythm. There is a rhythm to the way the world works. There is a rhythm to everything. When you're in rhythm, you're dancing. When you're in your head, you're feeling awkwardish, right? It's like being on the dance floor. The music can be playing. When you're in rhythm, man, you know that feeling. Then you're getting down, down, down. But when you're in your head, self-conscious. And it's like, you don't even want to be there. Now, sometimes you're in your head because you hate the song. It's like, I hate this song. But sometimes you're in your head because you're having these negative thoughts. It's no different in life. Sometimes we go into our head because we don't like the events that are going on around us. Or sometimes we love the events that are going on around us, but we're in our head while in that song. Even though we love the song, we're in our head. So here is one thing that I want to share on this particular call, and I'm going to share much more on the next one for those who join. Right? Whatever you see as your enemy owns you. What you see as your enemy owns you. Now, this is hard because we were raised to believe this is good, this is bad. But I was also raised, if you can see God in everything and everyone, or you can see love in everything and everyone, or you can see a growth opportunity in everything and everyone, God, love, and the growth opportunity will speak to you through everything and everyone. So no calling anything bad, ever again. Now, why is that important? Because what happens when we call things bad, when we develop that perspective, and now this is mental strength coaching here, right? And this is huge. When we call something bad, here's what happens. We have a perspective. Our central nervous system kicks in. We go into fight or flight. We tense up. We start breathing short and shallow. And again, 70% of the waste in our body is released to our breathing. Not when we're breathing short and shallow. We're holding on to those toxins now, right? And when we're holding on to those toxins, guess what's happening? We're not oxygenating our cells, our organs, our muscles, right? So we're not able to think clear, we're not able to perform clear. Just imagine for a moment, there's a football game. There are 2 teams. Both teams watched the news report the day before. It said it was going to be sunny. And so both teams prepared to be able to throw the ball and do all of these plays that you can only do in the sun, because if it's raining, the ball's going to be too slippery. All of a sudden, just like in this picture, the storm comes in. One of the teams because their whole playbook is out the window. Storm, bad. Fight or flight, I tense, I contract. I can't perform well when I'm tight. I can't think clear when I'm tight. The other team is like, yeah! They love it because it's an opportunity. So they start dancing, not literally dancing, but they start flowing with the storm. Which team wins 9 out of 10 times? Maybe even 9.9 out of 10 times. We know that, right? Okay. So how do we develop this mindset? How do we train ourselves to be able to know that everything that shows up in our lives is to help us grow and expand? Remember, all suffering comes from our inability or our unwillingness because we could be stubborn sons of a gun, can't we? Our inability or our unwillingness to expand and let go. Storm comes in, we contract. Storm comes in, we expand, yeah, and we let go of what we were planning and we adapt. This is where we're powerful. So please, everyone, close your eyes for a moment. And I want you just to go through this for a moment. Imagine you've claimed your voice. You know your sweet spot. And first and foremost, your sweet spot, your voice needs to be prefixed with the first word, learning. So the first thing you want to say about yourself in terms of your identity is, I am learning and growing. And then you can say, I'm strong and powerful. But if you say I'm strong and powerful first before learning and growing, when you're not feeling strong and powerful, you're going to say that's not true. But when you say I'm learning and growing, you give yourself permission to not be strong and powerful in that moment, but then see that storm as an opportunity to grow and expand. And imagine now you're finding your zone, you're in that space, and you have a crystal clear vision of where you're going and what you want to create. And you have a very crystal clear plan. And now you're rewiring your subconscious and your conscious mind, and you're feeling powerful. You're feeling strong. And when you're confronted with challenges, you're able to adapt to them and overcome them and even gain more strength from them. Breathe this way. Shift your posture this way. Even with your eyes closed, shift your eye gaze this way. Notice your self-talk now. Shift your self-talk this way. These things are connected to your nervous system. In this moment, we're beginning to rewire. This is exercise we're doing. This is not theory now. We're shifting our posture. We're shifting our breathing. We're shifting our eye gaze. And we're shifting our thought patterns. We are rewiring. We are reprogramming. We are upgrading in this moment. Feel yourself upgrading. And now notice the self-talk that comes in and smile at that. And whether it's good self-talk, like, hell yeah, this is working, or it's negative self-talk, like, oh my God, this is not, treat them both the same. Because remember, your identity is a learner and grower. And we treat winning and losing exactly the same. How do we learn and grow from this? We treat the self-talk exactly the same. How do we learn and grow from this? We are in the process right now of upgrading. Why? Because we're here to be the healthiest, happiest, most passionate, most purpose-driven version of ourselves. Not just for ourselves. Sure, our lives are better, but our contribution is greater. It goes beyond us. The wind is at our back. The wind is at our back. We forget this at times. That's EGO. We edge God out. We think that because things are happening in our lives that we're stuck. That's just the mind living in the past and in the future, neither of which we can control. But in this moment, we are growing. In this moment, we are expanding. Our cells are opening up. We're bringing ourselves to life, bringing ourselves to live. We're not just alive. It's time to live. It's time to live. And so, as we gain clarity of who we are and who we're not, and how we've been showing up in our lives, and we gain clarity of what our life looks like if we begin to show up strong, and we feel clear plan, and we begin to develop our mindset, the question now becomes, and you begin to open your eyes again, the question now becomes, how do I create stick-to-it habits that allow me to grow and succeed? Because all of us know that setting New Year's resolutions is great, but most people do not stick to them. We all know that joining a gym is great, but do you know that if every person who joined a gym went, the gym would go out of business because there's not enough room? They rely on people not showing up. They want you to go in and sign up, but they rely on you not showing up. It's how they're able to have a lower overhead, sell a smaller space. Many people signed up. Same thing with our career goals. So how do you create a stick-to-it habit? Well, first and foremost, there are 4.2 billion bits of information happening every given second. Out of all of that information, we are only able to see 1%. So out of everything that's happening now, the only thing that gets through here is 1%. What I mean by that is there's a whole reality in front of us, and we're only able to perceive it from a place of what we believe to be possible or what we believe about ourselves. So I know there's hundreds of people signed up for this call, right? And I have thousands of people and other but you know what my old belief system is I'm stupid and I'm not important. So I can see all of you here, and you know what I would be thinking to myself? Because the only thing that gets past these glasses is what I believe. I'm thinking to myself, you guys are only here because you feel bad for me. That's the way our subconscious works. We don't see the truth. We see what we believe. And it's hard to go beyond what we believe. Remember, 77,000 thoughts a day. And 90% of those 77,000 thoughts are the same ones from the day before. So unless we rewire our nervous system and our subconscious, we end up staying stuck. Now, we did the Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia. That's a trigger. Most people, I'm using a gym as an example, but this applies to career, it applies to relationships, it applies to everything. If you have an iceberg and you sit on top of that iceberg and you start rowing, right? You'll begin moving. But then what would happen is before you know, you'd start going in the opposite direction. Why? Because in the beginning, you're able to get some momentum. But there's so much happening underneath the water. The iceberg is really underneath the water, the majority of it. The majority of us is in our subconscious. It dominates us. So even though our conscious thoughts are like go forward, our subconscious is saying go backwards. So unless we're able to create specific types of habits that foster our ability to go forward, we will start moving forward, and before you know it, fall off track. So what I want to share tonight is this idea of the habit loop. Do you guys know what the habit loop is? Anybody know what a habit loop is? Here's how habits work. Here's how we work. We have a trigger. That trigger leads to an action. That action leads to an outcome. My alarm goes off. I have a feeling and I take action. Maybe I fall back asleep or maybe I get up. But depending on that feeling or that perspective of my alarm, my action is going to lead to an outcome that's either rewarding or non-rewarding, right? In other words, my alarm goes off to go to the gym and I'm like, oh man, I gotta go to the gym. I go to the gym, I get a workout, I leave the gym and I'm like, oh, that sucked. How often do you think I'm going back to the gym? It's not gonna last. However, if we shift this, when we shift this, we create a new trigger, which leads to a new action and a new perspective, which leads to a stronger outcome with a really powerful reward. The reward has got to be a dopamine hit. You guys know what I mean by dopamine? Dopamine is a chemical that the body produces. The reason why we're all stuck to our phones is because when notifications go off, it creates a dopamine hit. The reason we look at our Instagram or we look at our WhatsApp or whatever message, we're looking for those notifications because it creates an addictive feeling. And there's billions of dollars at this point that have gone into the research on how to create that. That's why they have us stuck to our phones. But we can do the same thing in terms of sticking to our habits. So first thing, cue or trigger, write this down, trigger. We're bringing this back to the 3 things that we talked about earlier that are leading us to achieving that high score of 10. The first thing that you have in your priority list, when it's time for you to begin that, and hopefully you've already started, by the way, we're doing it now. So the plane has left the ground. You're in the process of doing this. It's no more I should or I want to do it. You're actually here. So you're actually doing it. So the momentum has begun. So phase 2, when you wake up tomorrow, what's going to be your trigger that's going to remind you to take a step forward? Now, if it's an annoying noise, you're screwed. Sorry to say it like that, but you're going to be like, oh, I got to do this. But if it's something and your job is to create a trigger that's going to uplift you, maybe a beautiful sound or a song that comes on, or you have your best friend call you at 1 o'clock and scream, let's go! Whatever it is, make your trigger amazing so that you respond to that trigger with an action that you wrote down. Now, once you start doing that action, when you're finished for the day, instantly reward yourself with something that you want. Go get a massage, eat ice cream, whatever, go for a jog, go hang out with a friend, whatever it is. You must create a dopamine hit when you're finished the activity that day, because that's what's going to keep you engaged. What's currently happening is you have the trigger, it's time to go to the gym. You go to the gym, you work out, you're done, you're like, this shit sucked. No dopamine hit, only negative self-talk. Before you know it, the habit is gone. So now what I'd like for everybody to do is close your eyes for a moment. And we're going to take just a few minutes of breathing slowly in through the nose, out through the mouth. You're going to feel a little stuff coming in. You're going to feel a little emotion happening, maybe a little lightheaded now. Keep breathing. Have a little smile on your face because what you're doing right now is healthy. You're launching yourself forward. Now take a deep breath in and hold it. Smile. Exhale with a sigh of relief. And now imagine you found your strength. You're back in that space. You're gaining clarity of your vision. You have a crystal clear plan. You're working on your mindset. You're becoming mentally stronger by the minute, literally. Like you literally begin to feel this as you go. You're getting signs that you're on the right track. It's feeling powerful. You're feeling alive. And now you have routines that are in your day that you actually love. And you're feeling the results. And you're moving forward. Smile. This is happening. It's no longer something that you want to happen. That's negative self-talk. It's no longer something that should happen or needs to happen. It's happening. The plane has left the ground. You are here. You are here now. Listen, we don't have millions of years. We have now. And each now is an opportunity. So imagine who you can be when you are you. Not that idea of who you thought you were, not for the role you've settled into in life, but for who God made you to be. Who you are at your full best, whether you believe in God or not, is not even important to me. What is important to me is that you know that you matter. And that you know that when you are at your best, not only is your life, but everyone around you is going to benefit. Everyone will benefit when you are at your best. We need you at your best. We need each other at our best. This is why for the last several months, we've been doing the Show Up Strong Challenge. Some of you here are in that group. This is why I'm here. This is why you're here, to remind each other. None of us are the sage on stage. None of us are the sage. There is no such thing. We're all guides by each other's side to remind ourselves. And when we're in a community that people bring their strengths and they show up, gosh, we learn from each other. We grow from each other. We support each other's business. We support each other's personal lives. That's what this is about. That's what's important to me, to be a part of something. And that's why I've created this program here called the Show Up Strong Masterclass. Because our success is way too important to be left to chance. Now, some of you guys on this call are parts of companies that I go into. Now, for those companies, we're charging well over $20,000 a month. Some of you are nodding your head, I see you, because you know. What I'm inviting everyone on this call to do is participate in the masterclass. And if you sign up immediately, it's $347. And what this $347 will give you is much deeper tools than we went in tonight. So what we'll do on this class is we will actually come up with your goals. You'll get a workbook. First of all, you'll get an assessment. We'll see where you are scientifically. We'll learn where you are in a way that's deeper than the exercise I did tonight. We'll gain clarity of who you are at your very best, much deeper than we went tonight. We'll build out your strategy. We'll build out your plan much, much more in detail than we did tonight. And then we will do the exercises together on the calls. And in between calls, you guys and me will get together in the group and we'll be supporting each other on that journey. We will walk each other through this process. I am also going through this process. So you guys will support me as I'll support you. And we will support each other. Not only that, but you will get 3-month access to the Flow Code app. Now, what's the Flow Code app? It's freaking insane. Leaders, the lead scientists in the world, I see some of you smiling because you guys know this. Like some of you know what Flow Code is and maybe you've done some of this stuff with me. Flow Code is top neuroscientists, the top positive psychology scientists, the top experts in the world have put together this app to give you specific exercises that you can do every day in addition to what we're working on. All you'll need to do is get onto your phone. You'll go, I don't know if you guys can see it. This is the golf version. This is not what you guys will get. You'll click on the app and there'll be specific exercises for you to do from the second you wake up to before you go into a meeting or you go on a date or whatever challenge to help you get yourself into state. This is about rewiring. This is about showing up strong. And not only will you get that, you'll get it'll be a one-time 30-minute session with me, which I guess I don't usually do 30-minute sessions, but it would have a $300 value. So 30 minutes, $300 value session with me, where I will sit there and I will also coach you through this process so that when you come out of this, you're there. You're there. Now, the one thing I'm going to ask everyone to do is sign that contract. Not with me. It's not about anything you need to do with me. It's about once you go through this, you will teach these tools on your own to charities. You'll teach these tools on your own to people in your family, to your children, to schools. I don't care where you go. That's not my business, unless you want to talk about it with me. What is my business is I want to make sure that we're all building a legacy together. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to click on right now. Oh, there it is. Okay, can somebody say hello? Say hello. Or take yourselves off mute, please.
Hello.
Awesome. So if you could take yourself off of mute, only if you have something to say or if you have a question to ask. Again, this is the early bird special. You'll get the 4 online sessions once a week. You will also get free access for 3 months to the Flow Code app, and you'll get 1 30-minute private coaching session, just me and you, to go over your plan so that we make sure that as you get through this, this is the best investment. And I want you to imagine what your life is like once you make it. Any questions, guys? I don't like that part that we just went through, by the way. Now, any questions? Any comments? Any uncertainties? If you have any questions or if you're having any financial issues, you don't want your financial issue to hold you back. If you want to work out something, we have a few scholarships, partial scholarships that are available, or we can work out some sort of payment. Don't let finances hold you back from showing up strong. Make this small investment, and I would love to see you in the group. We're going to finalize this call.